Hi, I'm Darin Graham, and this is GreenShift, the show where I navigate the ever-changing landscape of the travel sector and the climate challenge. Everywhere I go these days, at conferences, on panels, one topic keeps coming up: AI. It's the buzzword of the year, and people say it's reshaping how we plan, book, and experience travel. But as travel companies race to use AI for customer service, pricing, and efficiency, I started wondering, what about the carbon impact of it all? Those massive data centers powering AI don't come free. Goldman Sachs says a single AI chat query uses 10 times more power than a Google search. And researchers at the University of Massachusetts found that training one large AI model can emit more than 600,000 pounds of CO2, about the same as 5 cars over their entire lifetimes. So where does that all fit in when travel companies report their emissions? How do you even count it? To help make sense of this new frontier, I spoke to Emma Cox, the Chief Commercial Officer at Climeco, a consultancy that helps organizations decarbonize and navigate the complexities of climate change. Emma's been thinking a lot about AI, travel, and carbon accounting, and how the sector can prepare for what's coming. Like this week, I've had some very dire climate conversations where it starts off like, oh, so what do you do for your job? And blah, 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 all lovely. And then it's like, we quickly get into climate and we talk about it. And then we reach the point where we're like, yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it is. It's bad. I mean, let's be real about it too. But
Let's be real.
I think I will probably mention the latest. I'm sure you saw David Suzuki come out with his statement around, we've failed. We've officially failed on our goals, and we will reach catastrophic limits sooner than we think. And what a dire picture indeed that is. But there's been a lot of chatter recently within LinkedIn and other forums just around disagreement of that dire.
A lot of against.
Yeah, it's full of tiredness. And that we can't give up. I think
yes,
sending the message out that we've got to give up hope isn't the right message right now. So
hello.
I'm just off the heels of Aspen Ideas Climate here in Chicago, so I do feel a bit hopeful. So you've got me at a good time.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. I was just reading through some of the notes that you sent me previously, and you said that as travel businesses start using AI in many different ways, they may be entering into a new emissions frontier. Why and how?
Yeah, I think there are so many layers to the onion to peel, Darin. And so I hope we get to peel back most of them today. But I think it's important to ground us in the general sort of understanding of AI and travel, right? So let's start there with the basics, and then we can add on the layers of sustainability. So I'll start by saying that I am not an expert in AI. I have a deep background in decarbonization, sustainability, and ESG, having worked in all sort of sectors and perspectives. So I am a sustainability expert at heart and by background, but I have taken a deep interest in this AI sort of trend in sustainability in recent months and the last year or so. So this is purely my perspective and based on some research that I've done personally. But so let's ground ourselves in the basics first. How is AI affecting the travel industry in general? I would say I would break it into a few different categories. So one is that it is used to personalize the travel experience. So AI really sort of uses data from travelers' preferences, browsing behavior, and sort of history to personalize recommendations. So that could be flights, hotels, destinations. And it's even used to sort of predict future travel needs for that personal use. It's also used in terms of dynamic pricing. So there are algorithms within AI that adjust prices in real time based on demand and competition, weather, even user behavior. So especially this is meant for airlines and hotel platforms. It's also used for virtual assistants or chatbots. I know we talked about this a little bit in our last conversation, but these tools sort of handle bookings, cancellations. You may have seen sort of that chat box pop up. That is an AI bot. It's used for language translation, 24/7 customer service, and ultimately sort of reducing costs and friction. So that sort of customer service one-on-one experience. Another bucket is with operational optimization. So AI really is used to forecast passenger loads for airlines. It predicts sort of maintenance needs. It reduces delays or cancellations. It improves fuel efficiency with the flight paths. And overall, sort of we mentioned this already, but customer satisfaction as well. And then an interesting bucket that I came across is fraud detection. So AI actually monitors bookings and payment behavior to detect fraudulent transactions in real time. So a lot of really interesting uses of AI in the travel industry. And we'll get to this a bit later, but you can see based on those buckets that it's being used for a lot of good and efficiency in the space.
Yeah.
So we can get into the sustainability layer in a bit, but hopefully that gives you a baseline for where AI is being used currently in the travel industry today.
Cool. And more generally, when it comes to AI, who's responsible for the emissions and how does it have or generate emissions?
Yes. Yeah. Very good question. So this is a complicated answer, I would say, and it's because there are so many players in this space. So when you break down the different players and the different stakeholders, it sort of comes down to scope 1, 2, and 3. So if you're not familiar with scope 1, 2, and 3, this is sort of carbon emissions accounting 101. So I'll sort of break it down in the world of AI. But so for scope 1 and 2, you have sort of direct emissions responsibility. So for AI, this means AI infrastructure providers. So you think of the hyperscalers of the world. So Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Those are the stakeholders sort of responsible for the emissions from the data centers, unless, fully offset or powered by renewables. So often these are reported in those companies' scope 1 and 2. So scope 1 is direct emissions and scope 2 is purchased energy emissions. So that's one stakeholder. There's also the AI developer. So you think of OpenAI and Anthropic. Those are some examples of the AI developers out there. If they own and operate their own infrastructure or sort of run training locally, they're directly responsible for the emissions of those compute processes. Then we get into the indirect emissions, so scope 3. So for this, the responsibility falls on the end users of AI systems. So this is sort of businesses this could be B2B, so businesses that use AI in products and services. So, a travel company using AI to optimize customer bookings would include AI-related sort of cloud usage in its scope 3. So category 1 is purchased goods and services emissions. It could also be corporate IT teams that are deploying large-scale models or using AI for internal operations. So they would be responsible for the upstream emissions of compute power. So this would be calculated through sort of a cloud provider data or emissions factor estimates. And then finally, it's you and I, the consumer, sort of the ones that are using ChatGPT to run queries. And that's where I think we're missing any sort of lever to pull in terms of could those consumers, contribute to or address the emissions associated with AI. So would love to sort of dig into that and what the solutions might be. But yeah, I think overall, Darin, we're just getting started on this journey. AI is quickly evolving. And so all of the accounting and the responsibility is sort of getting worked out in real time.
So just to make sure that I understand, if you're a travel business, like a hotel group, for example, or a booking company or whatever, if you're using AI as part of your business, that will fall under your scope 3, unless you somehow have your own data center and AI machine in your business.
That is correct. So that would be the hotel or travel company's scope 3. And we at Climeco actually are starting to see some companies include AI within their scope 3 accounting. So this is a new thing, but we are starting to see it. And we're strongly recommending that it be a category that they include.
So I go through sustainability reports and emissions reporting a lot, and I am yet to see AI mentioned, but I'm imagining that possibly from next year we'll start to see that coming through.
Absolutely.
I think. And I'll be very keen to see, what people are saying and reporting about it. I'm sure you will too.
Yes, yeah, and it is our duty as advisors to make sure that is captured. So yeah, it should be an interesting next couple of years. But I think, Darin, I'm starting to see this in the news more. AI is being scrutinized. You sort of hear as an AI user, well, don't use additional words in your prompt, that could add more emissions.
Or image generation.
Or, image generation is another one that adds another sort of additional carbon footprint. I just recently we were just before recording this talking about scrolling through Instagram, and my algorithm must have known that I was interested in this topic. And I came across a story where Grok is being challenged for their emissions associated with the data center. So there was thermal imaging that showed that a Grok data center was putting large amount of gas emissions into the atmosphere, and it was invisible to the human eye, but once thermally imaged, it was showing this sort of really jarring view of the emissions. And so I think that this is coming to light, and folks are going to have to start taking responsibility and accounting for this and being transparent.
I've seen images like that. Is that from like heat or whatever coming out of the actual computers, the machines or whatever?
Yeah. So it's that's my understanding of it. And this was a story that I just came across yesterday. But that there are actually gas turbines that are powering the servers within the data centers. And so you wouldn't know that they were emitting unless you had this thermal imaging. And so that's not to say that every data center, I know, Microsoft and Amazon, to name a few, are doing great things in terms of decarbonizing their data centers. So there's a lot of good work being done there, but I think the scrutiny is high, and folks are starting to pay attention.
Yeah. And going back to counting it, is that something you can help with at your business? Like, is that a service that you do? So
yes.
Yeah. So if you're a business and you just need to even start looking at how you count it in your scope 3.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, no, that is something that Climeco helps our clients with. And we think it's a really important piece of the puzzle. And it's sort of our job to be looking out for these trends and new potential sources of emissions and responsibility for these companies, and to sort of, mitigate that risk and also help them take responsibility for that. And then also point them in the right direction for solutions, right? So I'm sure we'll get to this, but there are a lot of solutions for mitigating the emissions associated with AI. So that's part of our responsibility to advise our clients on that.
Yeah, and I know we're in the early days, but I imagine, I've just been thinking about this, so I imagine that the pathway of emissions is very complicated. So, you might have some data centers that are powered by renewables or whatever, and they might be greener, and then others that are powered by fossil fuel based energy. If you're a travel business, I guess like it's working with consultants and emission counting services and consultants and your partners, asking them for their reports. OpenAI or wherever it is, can I have your emissions breakdown? It's complicated, basically.
It's so complicated. Yes, the layers of the onion are deep. But yes, it is complicated, but it is starting to happen more and more. And I think, like I said, if you look at what Microsoft and Amazon are doing, they have some very ambitious goals around, reducing their emissions associated with their data centers, associated with AI use. And then, sort of whatever they can't reduce, they'll compensate through offsets. So I think, a lot of great work being done. But as we've discussed, this is a growing industry. I think that we've predicted some astronomical growth of AI and the sort of need that will produce on the grid in the coming years. And it's hard to prepare for that. Hard to say also whether we can support the load that we'll need for AI use in the near future. So we came off of attending a panel at Aspen Ideas Climate this week where they talked about that. And it's sort of an interesting conversation around the energy landscape where we're no longer talking about completely decarbonizing energy, right? And it's more about how can we just support the load that we'll need. And that will take diversification of energy sources. And the conversation is sort of shifting away from, I fear, decarbonizing and more into diversifying, just because of the speed at which we're moving.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that. I'm so glad we have people like you, Emma, like thinking and talking about this, because I have thought about that in terms of air conditioning, because there's this huge demand for air conditioning because of rising heat in many parts of the world. And I've seen the International Energy Agency, for example, put projections for how aircon is going to drive up energy demand and is the energy load ready. But AI is another one, and you've just made me think of that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just actually today, the U.S. is announcing, I believe they're calling it the AI Action Plan. And so I'm eager to hear what that plan includes, especially given the U.S. administration's perspective on clean energy. And every forum that I've attended that has this conversation about the increasing load and demand on the grid and this sort of transition from decarbonizing to diversifying is saying that we'll need every form of energy out there. Clean, fossil fuels, natural gas, all of that is going to be needed to power the demand. And so I'm curious to hear what that announcement will be and how we plan on doing that without clean energy, if that's the plan.
Yeah, I would also be very eager to see that. So if you're a travel business, what do you think is the main thing to know right now about AI emissions? And then what do you think is the main thing they should be thinking about?
Yeah. Well, I think we started to touch on the need for good accounting, right? And I think that starting to think about that now is going to be very important because as we lightly touched on at the beginning of this episode, there is a double-edged sword when it comes to AI, right? There are so many good use cases for efficiency when AI is applied to travel. And I outlined some of that in terms of flight efficiency, reducing fuel usage. Also, one thing I didn't touch on is the cool uses of AI in terms of finding new ways to create parts of an airplane that are more efficient and lighter, right? And so these innovations are really starting to come up in AI and will have a positive impact on emissions and climate in the future. So very exciting things being done, but I think it's important that we keep in mind both sides, right? Both sides of that double-edged sword. Because if we're not thinking about sort of the implications of the energy use associated with AI, then we're not being responsible. And so I think my advice to hotel companies, airlines that are using AI would be to think about both sides, right? And to start thinking about how they're accounting, what their plan is for addressing the AI usage, how they're partnering with these hyperscalers that have these data centers, because I think the key to all of this is going to be reaching across all of the stakeholder levels to see how we can do this together, right? And so I would say maybe a big airline should reach out to Microsoft, to say, hey, how can we help? And maybe these conversations are already happening, but I would encourage them to continue.
We need an AI travel summit.
I think so. Are we doing this, Darin?
Slightly.
Should we be the chairs of that? I think we just nominated ourselves.
New York Climate Week, AI Travel Day. I see it.
We've announced it. We've officially announced it. We can't back down.
What's the space? Have you tried ChatGPT Agent?
I actually have not used it personally, but I've heard a lot about it. Tell me about your experience.
Well, I've tried it, and allegedly it can help you. Well, it can actually do things now, is how I understand it. So before it sort of gave you information and things. Now it can actually go ahead and book stuff or actually send emails. So you put in your login details and what have you, and it'll actually go and book your flight or, book your car hire and send emails for you. So I long story, but I'm planning a trip to somewhere to go and look into, it's an investigation. So I was asking it, so I need to go here. It's high risk. I need to go for 7 days. I need a quote for travel, car hire, everything, security, a security guard, a local guide, and everything. And basically, essentially, it did a whole breakdown. It found contacts for local guides, wrote emails to them. It wanted to book my flights. I was like, not yet. I wonder if it could actually calculate my carbon footprint of the trip as well. That would be...
Did you ask it?
No. That's embarrassing. I can't go back.
Sorry to call you out, Darin.
It's all right. It's journalism. We've got to hold each other to account.
That's right. That's your responsibility.
So I haven't booked anything yet. So I just wanted to get a quote so I can go to my bosses and be like, this is how much it's going to cost.
Right. So I don't know.
It was £6,000.
Okay.
And which I thought it's a lot, but for 7 days to the middle of the Amazon rainforest, it's not bad. So yeah, but anyway, I just think it could be a bit of a game changer for the travel sector from a
100%
consumer side. And mad. Anyway.
100%. Yeah. There was I think the American Hotel and Lodging Association State of the Industry report said that, I think they said something like trends like solo travel, generative AI, and sustainability won't just shape experiences, they'll transform expectations. So this is something that everybody will be using, right? It's inevitable. I'm not saying don't use AI. I think that's the wrong message to send. I think we need to be using it in a responsible way. And it starts with this sort of awareness, right? This awareness that there are two sides to this conversation, and talking to all of the stakeholders that I outlined to see, hey, what's your plan? What's your plan for AI use and AI emissions? Because both pieces need to be a part of the conversation.
And then I wanted to ask you also about offsetting. So
Yeah.
I know that's another big area where you have a lot of expertise in. How do you see that sort of combining with AI and the travel sector?
I guess what I would say is we as Climeco recognize that there are good and maybe not so good players in the offset world. And since we were founded 15 years ago, it's really been pretty critical to our success that we not only have high integrity and high quality offsets, but that we purposefully have a project development arm of our business, which helps and ensures that these offsets are supporting impactful projects. So I'll say that, but I also will say that we advise our clients and the companies that we work with to first reduce everything they possibly can, right? So the first step is to reduce. So we look at, marginal abatement cost curve, and within our advisory group. And that really sort of looks at all of the abatement measures that a company can take and what that will cost them, and prioritizes based on sort of the impact and the cost, right? What they can't reduce, we recommend that they offset. And I think that if you're working with if you're taking into account factors like third-party verification, permanence, co-benefits in terms of community impact, community support, and additionality, then you are being responsible in terms of the use of offsets, right? We work with a lot of companies that have very intense due diligence processes, which means they really dig into a project themselves, right? Or they hire a third party to do so, right? So to really make sure that it checks all those boxes. And we always recommend to our clients that they communicate transparently, and we bring in the right partners to support those projects. So I do think that the use of offsets is very good and a very useful part of a strategy when done right. So again, there are two sides of the coin always, but I strongly believe in the work that Climeco is doing, and I believe we are part of the solution. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, offsets are there's a wide range of quality out there, but there are like UN guidelines and national guidelines that they should be used. Like high quality ones can be used for the bit that you can't quite offset at the end of your footprint journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say we can't afford right now to not be supporting credible and high quality projects like the ones that we have in our portfolio. These projects are making a huge difference. I think we're up to 50 million metric tons within our portfolio since our founding. So that's real impact. You really can't deny that. We're working on very, really impressive projects, in my opinion, in terms of, we, for example, own the market in nitrous oxide abatement. So in case you're not familiar with nitrous oxide, it's a byproduct of many different manufacturing processes, but mostly high performance plastics, adipic acid, things like that. And so in case you don't know what nitrous oxide is, it's a harmful greenhouse gas. And so it is 276 times more potent than carbon dioxide when it goes into the atmosphere. So it has a pretty damaging effect on the warming of the planet. And so what Climeco is doing is we actually currently own the market within the US for nitrous oxide abatement, which means we are putting technology physically on top of the smokestacks that produce this gas. And that technology actually breaks the molecule apart. So breaks apart nitrogen and oxygen. And then those are two harmless gases that then get released into the atmosphere. So it's permanent. So you really can't argue with that type of impact. And so I think, it's important for us to do the due diligence. It's important for us to really dig into the impact that these projects are having. But I would very much caution against, saying absolutely no to offsets. I think that's a dangerous narrative that will take us backwards in terms of progress on climate action.
But the mechanism you just spoke about, the technology, is that classed as avoidance then, an avoidance offset?
Yes. So that would be avoidance because it doesn't get released into the atmosphere. And so you're not capturing it back and then destroying it. It's completely avoiding that gas to get into the atmosphere.
And then those are the saving has been turned into carbon credits that others can buy to offset.
Perfect. Yes. And without the voluntary carbon market, those projects would not happen. So we really do rely on the VCM to support those projects and to fund them long term.
And do you think avoidance credits, if high quality enough, are as good as additional credits?
Say more about additional credits.
So as in actually building something to suck up the CO2 that we might have put in, like new trees or carbon capture?
I think we need both.
Yeah.
I think we need both because we're looking into the future and we're looking into the past, right? And so both of these tactics address the carbon emissions from both. So I think we need both. And I've seen companies that diversify their portfolios to include both based on their previous emissions and what they're planning for.
Okay, great. I know you have to go, but I have a surprise for you. I did my carbon footprint. So
fantastic. Real time.
Yeah. So 7 days, flights to Brazil, 2 tons of CO2 is what I've been shown. And for the total trip, 2.6 tons. So the flight is obviously the major thing.
Yes.
Interesting though, what I thought was interesting, it has shown me that if I fly by premium economy or business, which I won't anyway, because I can't afford it, it would double.
Wow.
And if because I need to drive for a bit, if I hired an SUV, it would double over like a non-SUV vehicle. If I had an EV, I don't know about EV availability there. And then it's broken down the hotel CO2 and also my food and even my podcast gear as in charging equipment. So
it really does take a lot of things into account. I was going to say probably have to take that with a grain of salt. And depending on what happens with your actual trip, I wonder if you could go back to that and say, I'd like to revise it based on these actions that I took.
Yeah.
Does it give you an option, Darin, to address those emissions? Is there a lever to pull?
It says, if you'd like to offset this trip, gold standard or cool effect, £25 to £40 for 2.6 tons.
Wow.
Which £40 sounds like a tiny amount of money for that massive impact that I am going to have.
Would you pay it?
To me. I would like to know more details about the actual offsets, to be honest.
Fair.
Like knowing what I know, yeah. But I can see it. Some people might just pay it.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting results.
Yeah, and that really paints a beautiful picture of the role that consumers can play. And I think one of the gaps that we currently have in this space is not giving consumers an easy way to make conscious choices, right? And so we're trying to get there. And I think we need to be having more of these conversations and putting more solutions out there in terms of empowering the consumer.
But AI is so cool that it can just give you this idea, actually.
Very
and I don't know how accurate it is, but it's just, if they could just make it so that it's automatically there in your results, just so you know the carbon impact of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, Darin, the important piece, maybe that resonates for consumers like you and I who are conscious and aware of that type of thing. But I think unfortunately the average consumer might not care, right? And so how do we give them a relevant and important piece of information that gets them to act? So I think we need to be thinking about that in terms of, what does this mean for you? What does this mean for you, average consumer? And
Yes.
what would it take for you to take action?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I know you have to go, but just before, is there anything else that you would like to say that we may have missed?
I think that my final message, Darin, I think we had talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but we are in a very dire climate situation right now. I think it's worth mentioning, right? And it's hard to not let yourself get pulled into the doom and gloom of it. But I just came from, like I said, Aspen Ideas Climate, and it was a former governor of Seattle that said, not Seattle, of the state of Washington, that said, "Don't let the bastards get you down." Hopefully we can say a word like that on this podcast. But truly, I think that's right? I think we can't fall into the doom and gloom. We have to continue to question, solutions like offsets. I think that's the right thing to do, but also not dismiss them, because there are some really meaningful projects out there that are doing great things and making great projects, making great progress, one of those words, against our climate goals. So let's continue to scrutinize, but also solution and invest in real climate solutions. So that's what I'll say, and let's not give up hope.
Don't let the bastards bring you down sounds very like Margaret Atwood-esque.
Yeah, I'm gonna live by that. So
I love that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darin. It's a pleasure. It always is. And hopefully we can continue the conversation.
There's still no clear way to count the emissions from AI in travel, at least not yet. But if we don't start including it in carbon accounting, we risk ignoring a growing source of impact. At the same time, AI isn't just a problem. It could also be part of the solution. Smarter flight paths, predictive maintenance, lighter aircraft materials, all powered by AI. Could this help the industry cut emissions in ways we're only beginning to understand? So maybe the question isn't just how much carbon AI creates, but also how much it could help us save. Either way, as Emma said, we need to keep hope alive and keep asking hard questions about the tools we're using in the fight against climate change. Thanks for listening to GreenShift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and follow along as I continue to explore how the travel industry is navigating and transforming in the age of climate change and technology.